Thank everybody for their patience. We will now call this regular council meeting to order at 5:07 p.m. To start, we'd like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the unceded ancestral territory of the Silks, Okanagan peoples, and the Splatsin of the Secwepemc Nation. We'll be looking for a motion for the adoption of this September 3rd, 2024 agenda for the regular council meeting. Do I have a mover? Councillor Wayner, seconder, Councillor Valstar. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And this is passed. We'll be looking now for the adoption of the minutes for the August 12th, 2024 minutes of the City of Armstrong regular council meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Todd, seconded by Councillor Drapla. Thank you. If there are no errors or omissions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, and this will pass. And that the August 20th, 2024 special council meeting minutes be adopted. Moved by Councillor Drapla, seconded by Councillor Wayner. Being no errors or omissions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, and this too will be carried. Thank you, everybody. And moving right along to our business, as we're a few minutes late, we'd like to call up Superintendent Blake McLeod and welcome officially.
Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. I'll start over again. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and council members, for having us here this evening. And I just wanted to introduce Sergeant Shenna Vestergaard here this morning. She is our acting rural commander. Steve Mancini is away from work at present. And Shenna is filling in that role. And normally her job is the operations non-commissioned officer for the rural area. So she's well vested in the communities in the rural and has just taken over that role at this time and doing a great job. So I won't be talking about the IPE tonight unless you had questions about it. But Shenna is, she was our representative for the public safety piece of the planning for this year's IPE and did a great job in my estimation. So thanks, Shenna. And if you want to grill her with questions, you're more than welcome to, Mr. Mayor. So take the heat off me. So I just asked you to click? Last time, yeah. I think I made a clicking noise and then you clicked. So let's do that. First slide, we'll just get right into it. This is a photograph of a softball game we had during this quarter, again, presenting the April, May, and June 2024 quarterly report. This is one of our community events, the Greater Vernon North Okanagan Detachment members participated in. Thankfully, and lucky for us, we get invited to a lot of different events in the different communities that we serve. And this is one of the amazing ones. We played floor hockey with the Special Olympians before, and softball we've played with them the last 2 years, and they kicked our butt, but we had an amazing time. So in and amongst many other different community events we've had, one locally we had where I got to speak to the mayor as well, was one of our local coffee with the cops, and we also did a recruiting session in downtown Armstrong here for that during the quarterly period. So and it was very well attended. So next slide, please. This is in the greater report. You'll see, and we can just go right to the last line there. It's broken down into our frontline policing or general duty uniform report. You'll see the serious crime unit report, special victim unit report, and our targeted policing report. Again, part of the greater reporting. So, this slide shows in Armstrong the quarter 2 to comparison. And you see, and I've looked, and Shen and I just discussed it before, the increases in calls for service shows an increase for the quarter up 13.5%, and then year to date, 21% increase. There's no real, that we can find or can note right now, any real rationale reason for that increase, whether it be an influx of people or an increase in population. There's nothing that we're aware of that is cause for that. Now, again, as I've mentioned many, many times before, these percentages look large when you're talking, they're small numbers. So if we look at the final slide, we won't get to yet, but it shows the increases. You're talking sometimes 2, 3, 4, either files, calls for service that can change, you know, the percentage looks bigger than it is. So also in there, you'll see an increase in the Q2 and the year to date in criminal code offenses, and then as well property offenses, which again does cause us a bit more concern. So we look at that a bit more carefully. And you'll see the year to date one is 34.6%. And in the final slide, we'll look at that and just see again, it's not a huge increase, but the numbers are there that do cause us concern, and we'll get to that. So at the bottom, we've got the reports to Crown Council with again, a slight increase and this is North Okanagan, so that includes Armstrong, Small Machine, does not include Enderby, and it would include Lumbee, I think, Shannon, as well. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. So a slight increase in our reports to Crown Council submitted, a slight decrease in our prisoners out here. And again, small numbers make a big difference there. And you'll see a large increase in mental health calls, 70.2%, year to date, 49.4%. And from my review, there's nothing I could speak to, and this is for the entire North Okanagan, not just Armstrong, nothing that I could say that would actually speak to why that increase is, whether it's a greater awareness or people are calling in more. I think we will have one slide here about our integrated crisis response team. So I think people are more aware that the police do have some of that expertise, the nurse embedded in a car for us. That may be part of the increase, but I'll be honest, anecdotally, I can't even say what the rationale or reason is for that. We'll wait and see. And if the next quarter, if there's another increase, then we'll do our best to try and drill into that and see, dial down into that. So next slide, please. So again, this talks about our integrated crisis response team. The Q2 stats, as you'll see, Vernon and Coldstream area, there were 491 mental health related occurrences, and then the North Oak 80. And again, that's for all of the areas. ICRT attended 226 calls for service, and they also assist our frontline, which is very helpful with 50 different investigations during the quarter, April, May, and June. Again, I believe I shared last time as well that the ICRT right now, it's 2 regular members, 3 nurses. They're on 7 days a week. Right now, the 2 regular members are City of Vernon. They pay for those RMs. We are hoping for provincial funding for 1 RM so that we could use the ICRT. They do come out into the rural sometimes, not that often, but hopefully if we do get one of those regular member positions paid for, the application was made a long time ago by Superintendent Barr, and we're just waiting to see the results of that. Yeah. Next slide, please. So again, this is just our response to the toxic drug crisis that continues in our communities across British Columbia. And again, I think Shauna and myself have explained this before. These are just some of the efforts that we make, and these are done when we have people in cells and they're getting released, and we can offer them, there's a video we can show them. It's all just referral based, and they choose, the prisoners who are being released. It's their choice, and they choose whether or not to take us up on watching a video, getting a referral, getting some assistance, being provided naloxone kits, as you can see in the far right. So that is what we continue to do in our cells when people are being released. So next slide, please. And here's some of the traffic enforcement that has been done across in the City of Vernon, in Armstrong. And you'll see a decrease in charges, violation tickets over the quarter, and as well the year to date, but an increase year to date in warnings. So that may make the public happy. Shannon and I have talked about that many times before. And I think I've explained before, a lot of that just depends on the situation, depends on officer discretion. So we don't dial in or drill down too much into that. I'm happy to see that there is a bit of a balance there, which again, I encourage our members to use discretion, and sometimes a warning can be just as impactful to our community members as a ticket. So next slide, please. This just shows, again, the total number of forensic identification section files that they've worked on over the quarter. And this is right across, you'll see on the far right, the North Rural. So 12 files in total, and those are the people who are specialists who deal with, say, DNA collection, fingerprint identification, and those kind of things. So we have a 3-person team, and who does an amazing job. Mostly they're focused on persons crimes, the more serious files, but they will deal with, like you'll see at the end, if we have an increase in stolen autos or those kind of things, they do examine stolen autos and attempt to identify suspects after the fact at scenes, break-ins, those kind of things. Next slide, please. This is a photo of Phantom on Maple Lake actually heading to a call. That's the dog. We currently have 1 active police dog service member, and he attended over the quarter 36 calls for service, 22 of those being in the North Okanagan. He is our liaison with search and rescue and does an amazing job with them, and is quite embedded in that community. And we also have, I think, I'd say it's more or less been finalized, but likely should be finalized soon, a second dog person to be added to the area as well. Probably won't be in service until the end of the year, but we're quite excited about that. So next slide, please. And these are the numbers and the actual stats, which sometimes paint a picture, sometimes help us out. And I think I've mentioned before that if I'm here and trying to figure out what's happened in our community, or Shanna has, we're behind. We're months and months behind. So we would have drilled in and dialed into some of any of the trends that are happening there. But you see, again, small numbers making kind of a big percentage change, or seemingly big. But again, the calls for service in April, there was a big jump there, but a smaller jump in May and June. So no real trends or anything that drew concern for us. But again, sometimes it depends who's in the community. And obviously we are a bit of a traveled portion of the road between some of the larger communities. And we get a lot of, if you watch the news, there's some of our other bigger local communities have some more of the violence and that kind of stuff. And they do travel through this area, unfortunately. So there's a bit of an impact that way, and I believe that is the last slide. Yeah. Like it says, thank you for the continued support. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions from council?
None
Yeah,
for
I think
Jenna?
I'll just make a comment. Yeah, it was a little startling. So I think this is the first time we've seen those numbers or those percentages increase. And like you suggest, it's probably not that many more significant calls, but just because we do so little, it shows up as being significant. And it did catch my concern. So it's great to be able to reassure everyone that we're still living in a very, very safe community with very little bad things going on in it. So yeah, on that note, I just wanted to thank you very much for your time again tonight.
One really quick question that had nothing to do with the report. Do you feel there was an uptick in offenses during the fair, not at the fair, but in the area? I see a couple of things on Facebook that vehicles and hay and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's probably going to be anecdotal, and I will defer to Shanna, but I think we had 0 arrests during the IPE, like at the IPE grounds itself, which is a first in a very long time in my time here. So that's a good thing. I think my perception of some of these larger events have gotten better and better over time. People's behavior and the kind of more violent or, intoxicated type behavior. There were some incidents. I just heard about one right now from Warren Smith, and Shanna was already aware of it. So, but Shanna, I don't know if you'd like to come up and talk about the IP or anything like that.
Yes, thank you, sir. So this was my first IP since I just arrived in October, and I didn't really know what to expect. But I did work 3 of those days. And I followed up with the watch commanders for the night shifts. So we did not have any arrests inside the IPE, which was good. We always had 2 members working until closing, an hour after closing, and then starting at 10 o'clock. And I think it went really well. I was well received by the public. And the only calls myself and my partner had were missing children. But they had a very nice setup where as soon as you walk in, there was a booth where the parents could get bracelets for their kids with their cell numbers. And then there was a missing child booth further back in the kids area too. So there was a lot of security, a lot of patrols, and we were quick in locating the missing children. So I was very happy with it.
Just to follow up to that, I have a missing child. He didn't call and wish us happy anniversary. Can I file a report?
That's not, no.
Great, thank you very much, and we look forward to the next quarter policing in a few months from now. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now I believe we're going to hear from Michelle Hill on the Okanagan Street Wetland Enhancement Project.
Okay, I'm gonna try this and see if it works.
Okay, so your worship and counselors, thanks for having us. I'm the vice chair of the Armstrong Wetlands Association, so I'm presenting on behalf of them. We've got quite a few members, our chair and our board member and our treasurer. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our Okanagan Street wetlands. Oh. Okay, so I'm going to give you a project overview, tell you about the location, the objectives, and the rationale of our project, the phases and timelines, and the creation of an open water pond and increased biodiversity. So the reason why we're doing this. Okay, slide. So the project location, it's right on Okanagan Avenue. So it's right in here. So this is Okanagan Avenue. This is Bacon Creek. This is the southwest side of Okanagan Avenue. Okay, slide. So the objectives of our project are to outline the species and habitats confirmed, present, or migrating through the site, and to increase habitat and species biodiversity via an open water pond. So an open water pond will have more species than the monocultural cattail marsh that's right there. So actions completed in 2023. We conducted a comprehensive biological inventory, which we submitted July 4th, 2023. I believe you guys have all seen that. We submitted an amphibian salvage permit, which was August 26th, 2023. And that is to make sure that there's no amphibians in the area when we're doing the excavation for the pond. And we did an environmental impact assessment, section 11 application. And that was submitted September 20th, 2023. And we've also had First Nations review referrals with Splatson, and that's ongoing. It's been ongoing the whole time. Right. So you can see we have this existing cattail marsh, 3,900 square meters. So it's pretty much exclusively cattails. There's a few invasive species and other species around the perimeter, but other than that, it's a monoculture of cattails. Slide, please. And you can see the invasive species in the first picture, and then just a view of the cattail dominated marsh. Okay. So the rationale, what's presently there? So we have this monoculture of cattails covering 0.39 hectares, which is 3,900 meters squared. We have 39 species of vegetation present around the perimeter, including invasives and native species. We have 11 wildlife species that we found present. There's 0 species at risk currently in that area. And we have a red-winged blackbird and a song sparrow that were actively nesting when we were visiting the site. So what can we create? So we can create an open water habitat adjacent to Megan Creek. There is no connection to Megan Creek. We're going to excavate a 300 meter squared open water pond. This is going to enhance species biodiversity. We expect 49 species expected to inhabit the created pond. We also expect 69 bird species currently using the lagoon, which is within a kilometer. We're going to provide critical wildlife habitat. and benefit the community aesthetically, ecologically, and educationally. So we're going to involve students and have a platform that we can have kids come and learn about wetlands and habitat. Okay. Maybe mine will work now. Oh, okay. So this project has been in the works since 2021. 2022, we started getting really active. So in June, we had the BC Wildlife Federation Wet Keepers Workshop. July 13th, we had a meeting with Shirley Fowler and Dan Passmore. And August 13th, we had a letter to council. September, delegation to council to introduce this idea and ask for your support. In September, we had a meeting with Armstrong Wetlands Association and the city's planner, Lori. We've had quite a few meetings now. And October was a city letter of support to the North Okanagan Conservation Fund grant application. For 2023, I'm not going to read all of those. So we got a letter of support for the Okanagan Basin Water Board. We were successful in BC Wildlife Federation, giving us a significant amount of money. We had a grant from the North Okanagan Conservation Fund. Asparagus Theater gave us donations. Okanagan Basin Water Board. We did in July, that's when we did the inventory of Okanagan Street wetland. We're successful in the co-op Good Fuel Day. We raised $2,113 that day. Submitted the salvage permit, submitted the section 11, and we got a letter of support for the North Okanagan Conservation Fund grant application. So 2024, January, we got the approval of the amphibian salvage permit. June, we got the approval of the section 11. This summer, we met with concerned citizens. We started the initial billboard design. And in September, later on, we're going to be installing a billboard designated along Okanagan Street. And we're going to set up the amphibian fencing and exclusion pond to make sure that none of those amphibians and reptiles get into the area when we're going to be doing the excavation. Okay. And the highlights. So as I talked about, we did the comprehensive biological inventory because we wanted to know, what do we have? What are we starting with? We also did a test pit to determine the water level. And I believe it was 6 centimeters below. Yeah, I should know what test pit, but I said 5 at first and it was 6. The Splatson First Nation cultural monitor and referrals, so we're in communication to make sure Splatson's been involved in this. We run everything through Splatson. Community outreach and consultation, August and September, we reached out to the adjacent landowners. And there was one landowner that was not totally in favor. So we had someone come out and talk. And we do believe we have her approval at this point. So that's good. We got the change approval June 13th. And I talked about the salvage permit. And we're estimating that we're going to be doing the excavation between December and February. We want to wait till it's really cold and the ground's frozen. And it's estimated to take 2 days. And we're going to create a pocket forest. So we're going to plant trees and shrubs in the area as well to create more habitat. And we're going to construct a boardwalk and a viewing platform in the spring of 2025 to make sure that there's that educational component as well. Okay. So this is what we're creating. So you can see here, this is the pond. And that is the hummock. Some of the excavated material. So the open water pond is only going to cover 7.7% of the parcel. So 300 meters squared in a 3,900 meter squared area. We don't want to fill the entire area with the wetland. We want to make sure there's still that cattail habitat adjacent. It's going to be a maximum of 2 meter depth, and that's to prevent the encroachment of cattails. We're going to have an island 4.5 meters squared in the middle, and that's going to be native substrate. We're actually just going to dig around to create the island. We're going to have the hummock for planting, which is going to cover 115 meters squared. We're gonna put in some large woody debris in there as well as logs and basking habitat. And the pond is going to be 30 meters minimum from Megan Creek. So there's going to be no connection to Megan Creek. And we want to make sure there's no connection because of the potential for fish to kill and eat any of the amphibian eggs. So no fish. So project budget, we've raised $56,265 to date. Yeah, so we need to thank the Okanagan Basin Water Board, BC Wildlife Federation, North Okanagan Conservation Fund, the Armstrong Co-op, Asparagus Theater, Tapestry Choir, and private donations and in-kind contributions. Okay, that's our budget. I know you guys had a chance to look through it, so you can see what we've had as in-kind and where all the funding is going. Any questions on that? And next slide. That's it.
Any questions for Michelle? Steve, we're gonna let you lead for this.
No questions, just a huge thank you to your group for all the work that you put in, and it's so nice to see all the data and the research put into like the planning behind it, right? It's, I guess, could have been much easier just to come along and say, hey, let's put this pond here, but to be able to come in and know what we have there and what can be there and just putting all the legwork in, it's so greatly appreciated. And
Mhm.
I think it's going to be a tremendous resource for our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
What he said, plus, I'd also like to, congratulate the group for having the vision. And even though you had some hiccups, facing them on and dealing with them in a professional, respectful manner. Because, there was some opposition to start with. I'm not hearing any opposition right now. And I think when you're able to put in a report like this that details everything with all the transparency, I think you're gonna have a lot clearer sailing, not sailing on the pond, but
Mhm.
moving forward. So no, I just want to congratulate your group for the way that they've handled the controversy and not just turning a blind eye to it. So congratulations.
Also, thank you guys very much for your work. It is gonna be just awesome to be able to walk by and see that. I already enjoy the songbirds that are in there and the noises that are coming out, certainly from the larger section, and to increase that is gonna be just awesome. So once again, thank everybody for their very hard work in here, and I can hardly wait for it to be completed. And we're here if you need to come back for more help along the way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Just one more quick question. Did you only find one blackbird nest?
Yes, actively on the day that we went through there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't want to be the downer here, but are we prepared, you prepared for ongoing maintenance and everything else as time goes on? And
There shouldn't be a lot of ongoing maintenance. We are prepared for weeds. So we are putting down straw and we're planting trees and shrubs and seeding the area as well. And so we will have the ability to go in and pull weeds. Other than that, it should be pretty taking care of itself, just like a natural.
people dump their goldfish and things like that in there, you'll be ready to take it out?
They won't survive actually. If someone
Okay.
dumps goldfish, because it's only 2 meters deep, it will freeze to the bottom and it will be winter kill. It'll be anoxic and the fish won't survive. So
There you go.
yeah, solve the problem.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
And next we'll be moving along to departmental updates. Sorry for not being prepared. Let's start then with Philippa. Thank you, Philippa.
Good evening, council. For mine, as you can see, I've limited it just to the communications aspect of my department. Mostly because a lot of the legislation items I've been working with are in camera, so I really didn't think I should be posting those out. Communications, we have been, for lack of a better term, going gangbusters. We've now trying to figure out what we need to release what day. So we're trying to limit, for example, our socials, our Facebook to just one in the morning and one in the afternoon, what is best suited for when, making sure that we're planning ahead. We did have the water restrictions come out. So that was a full-on public notice and press release. And, oh my goodness. Can we raise the podium? So we did that one, and those always run through whichever, they run through myself and also through the director. So that one went through Brad as well and for review and any amendments. And the boil water notice as well went out and then was rescinded a couple of days later. So that was a hot minute, that one, thank goodness. And otherwise, between the IPE and school going back in, that pretty much covers what we were doing this past couple of weeks.
Great, thank you, Philippa. Is there any questions for Philippa? Do we have any messaging going out with just reminding people for driving that school is ineffective?
That went out today.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll call on Warren Smith, please, for Community Service and Emergency Program updates.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So under Community Services, it's been a fairly busy couple of weeks since we last spoke. Just a very brief overview of the IPE. We don't have all of our numbers in as of right now, but preliminary numbers were in the low 20s for tickets issued, which is great to see. It's down considerably over years past. There was a lot of legwork that was done by our bylaw officer and by our operations department to ensure that we had some good messaging out there, as well also signage and that, which really helped a lot. A few contact notices, 9 in total, 7 warnings. There was some, I think, rushed moments where people made decisions to park in certain places and weren't aware that they were parked beside a hydrant or in someone's driveway. So we dealt with those accordingly and did our best to try and make contact with those individuals. So thank you to the RCMP that worked with us in finding contact numbers for some of these individuals that were able to get them back to the point of the offense and have vehicles moved to more appropriate spots. So that was good to see. As we're aware, there was a little bit of a public go around on social media in regards to one of our local food vendors and that is a permanent fixture in our community. Unfortunately, there were some changes made to on their part to open when originally they were going to be closed. We did have some consultation with them during the first day of the fair, as well as also with the IPE themselves. We were given the opportunity to use some discretion. So we had some discussions with the owner of that venue and made some adjustments. Unfortunately, the complaints continued to come in. The IPE received complaints themselves from vendors on site. So unfortunately, we had to take further enforcement action and ask them to close going into the second day, I guess it was. But we've had some further consultations. The owner of the company is very cooperative and understanding, and I think we should be able to, as discussed in the past when we received some communication from the Chamber of Commerce, that we have it on our work plans for 2025, and I think there'll be some simple productive objectives that we'll be able to do to prevent this from happening again and to work with this current vendor that we have, and if there are others that are solidified in the community at that time, that they will be able to continue hopefully to operate without being negatively impacted. Additionally, there was one incident that involved a gentleman that was driving around our community in an unlicensed golf cart. We were under the impression that this individual was also impaired and committing fraud. Our bio officers did come in contact with this individual. He attempted to evade contact with our officers and ended up on leaving the area on foot, returning to his residence before the RCMP were able to intercept him. So there was a little bit of negative outcome of that did get to social media, but then was removed. But it was an unfortunate incident. We were concerned for the safety of the public and ultimately the safety for this individual based on observations that we had seen going on in the community. Make water work. We are currently in fourth place. We are one behind Oliver, so we need two to get ahead of Oliver. And next above that is 31, which I believe is Lake Country. And then the city of Kelowna is at 90. So we've got, I think it's just about a week to go. So if you haven't pledged with the Make Water Work program, we highly recommend that you do that. And if your friends and family and others in the community haven't done that, we would encourage you to do that so we can try and get number 8 for our championships. Stolen solar panel. So our speed reader board that was located on Otter Lake, unfortunately over last weekend, the solar panel was stolen from the unit. The unit itself is still all intact. So we've been in contact with the provider of that unit to get a replacement. We don't know what the cost will be, but hopefully we can get that back in place. Councillor Valstar can probably talk all about the power and that and how they probably won't be able to do too much with that unit because it's just powers a little 12 or recharges a 12-volt battery. So I don't think anyone will be putting up it at their house anytime soon, but it was an unfortunate incident and obviously is going to cost the city a little bit of money with staff time and then the replacement of the unit itself. WorkSafe BC, as of November 1st, there is new first aid requirements that we need to adhere to. So we are working with Orca Occupational Health and Safety, WorkSafe BC, and our staff to bring ourselves into compliance. We need to complete risk assessments for a lot of the work that we do, which we have done in most cases. And then from that, we determine what our level of first aid that needs to be provided. We also have to take into consideration any rural works that we do. So for example, if we have staff up at Silver Star Lakes, there are requirements that we will have to meet through the provision of the type of kits we provide and training that's provided to staff and certification. We did a generator test back on August 2nd. I will say it was mostly successful. I'm glad that we did it as a test because it did show a few little faults. Nothing hugely significant. We were able to recognize that the backup power system for our generator went down to 3%. So we almost lost power on our server. So it was good that we were able to get that corrected. There's some things like the microwave works in the fridge, but the fridge doesn't. So we'll have to work on some things in future planning and that. But overall, we have enough power in the building to be able to sustain operations during an event. It went fairly smoothly. And as I said, we'll be able to get over some of those little hiccups. Fire Smart. So we have had our project reviewed. We're waiting to hear back. I was hoping that I was going to be able to have some information for you tonight. That's why I threw it on there, but unfortunately we didn't get that information in time. And then upcoming for special events, we do have the Ghost Walk that I anticipate should be approved. So that'll be offered for the 25th and the 29th based out of Station Square with a partial road closure. And then the block party that was set for Jackson and Poole Street has been canceled. There were some logistics issues that we ran into that. There is a funder that is providing funding for block parties. And unfortunately, we've got some logistics that we need to work out to make sure that these are successful because what ends up on happening, people don't realize they need to purchase insurance and there's other steps that they need to get through in order to make these things happen. So we'll be working with the funder to ensure that all the information is provided right up front to the applicants. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Warren. Questions for Warren? Steve?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the update on the bylaw enforcement with our mobile food vendor. Yeah, it's just really disappointing to see those outcomes come about with our local businesses. And I'm not sure the origin of that bylaw, kind of coming on to council after that bylaw had been adopted. And I don't know how historical it is, but there has to be a way that we can amend that bylaw so that we're honoring our permanent businesses in town, but also protecting those businesses from from other vendors taking advantage of that and coming into town just for the IPE, right? Like we want to be able to prevent that from happening, but also not put roadblocks up for our existing businesses. And I think maybe a lesson for me in all of this is thinking, knowing the intentions of the city to not get in the way of businesses or enforce those bylaws. But then when there's still a bylaw and thinking that people aren't going to complain about our nice little food truck that sits there, right? And then until they do, and then we're kind of forced into a corner of enforcing when we wasn't our intention. But I think that sits on us. We could have prevented this a long time ago by just amending that bylaw instead of waiting for the full bylaw review. And so I know we have a lot of runway now before the next IPE, but I think even seeing maybe if staff can come forward with a bylaw amendment just for that particular section of it before going into that whole bylaw review. Lots can happen in a year. We've seen that in the last kind of 6 months of us trying to get at this bylaw, and it kind of just got pushed to the side, and then we end up in these situations. And so I guess I'd like to make that motion then, that staff come back with a bylaw amendment that would satisfy just that clause in the bylaw, just as a precursor to the review. And then we can always change it again later. But then if something happens, at least it's in place again for next IPE. So I'll make that motion.
All right, we do have a motion seconded by Councillor Wayner, actually. Would anybody like some more conversation on that? Councillor Fowler.
I agree with what you're saying, Steve. I just, you're already working on this anyway, aren't you?
No, we had put it off to the 2025 work plan just due to staff workload, because the overall recommendations that were brought forward by the chamber involved 3 of our departments, and just based on our current workload. And also at that time, the vendor in question was going to be closing down. They had a change of plans that put a little bit of a curveball into it, but to do a simple amendment to the bylaw and bring that recommendation back to council could be done. Yeah.
Councillor Drapla.
Yeah, and so I still like the overall, like more in-depth review to be done as well, but at least if we get that one amendment in there, then we can make sure that something like this doesn't happen. And I guess maybe through our next work plan to even just taking a look at our other bylaws to see if we have bylaws that are linked to the IPE that are impacting other areas of the city too, and how we're doing business. I mean, I know that we want to support the IPE that's happening, but we also want to enable our business to continue as a city. And I don't know how many other bylaws there's these little clauses in, or if there are any, but.
Any further questions? Philippa, you do have the motion, correct? All right, I will call the question. All those in favor of amending the bylaw? And that will be carried. Thank you. Moving on.
Through the mayor, so to answer further to Councillor Drapla's question, the other related subject would be traffic and parking, that we saw a number of issues and concerns expressed by businesses and specific to parking and that. So there should be, I guess, a future opportunity as well that we would address and look at our parking situation.
I'm assuming we'll also be reviewing that with the Kerry project and all the other things, traffic safety as we got moving forward. So it's on the to-do list.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you very much, Warren. Councilor Drapla.
I would just also like to thank all the other local businesses that kind of rallied and helped support our local food truck and in that time. So I think that's part of what makes Armstrong great, right? Is that we have everyone's looking out for each other. And I just would like to, as much as possible into the future, make sure the city's not getting in the way of that stuff. Like we're a partner in helping as well. So thank you.
Great. If there's further, thank you very much, Mr. Smith. And Brad, you're up with Public Works, please, and thank you.
Thank you. A quick operations update. As you recall, we had a boil water notice, in fact, a precautionary one that was put in place for 250 properties that were south of York Avenue. The boil water notice was in effect from August 14th to 16th due to an increased coliform bacterial count. We managed to, through testing, isolate that occurrence to one of the sampling locations that has environmental exposure. And we've done another round of testing and some line flushing, and our tolerances are back in line with the BC Water guidelines. So we're good there. We received correspondence from the BC Water Stewardship Branch. In discussions with them, they've identified the Fortune Creek watershed as a level 4 drought and requested Armstrong move to level 2 drought conditions for water conservation in an effort to provide a little bit more stream flow for some of the critical habitat. There were some issues downstream where DFO and Splatcheen were concerned with some of the fisheries. And so we have implemented that, and those water restrictions will stay in place until further notice, until stream flows improve and the drought conditions lessen. Thomas Hayes Lagoons down to 10% capacity, and we've wrapped up our spray irrigation program for 2024. And we will work towards decommissioning the plant and getting ready for our storage for the winter months. The lagoon sanitary line replacement project is nearing completion. All the pipe is in the ground, and crews are just going through and starting to work on backfill. Tomorrow we'll be conducting our camera inspection and pressure testing, and then reinstating that area. We're looking to cap the sanitary line with 4 inches of crushed gravel material to allow maintenance access for us, as well as create a bit of a recreational connection from Jackson over to Park Street. And I think that will be a nice addition to the community. The construction of the Shuswap North Okanagan Rail Trail section from Lansdowne to Armstrong is complete. The trail is in place, and fencing is still to be put in here at a later date, but the majority of the works are done. Crews have demobilized for the time being, and I suspect in the next week or so, the bollards and the fencing will take place, and then that will be open to the public. And the cure in place pipelining is scheduled to begin the week of September 16th, and we're anticipated to have that wrapped up by the middle of November. And that's everything. I can answer any questions.
Thanks, Brad. So we had a rail trail meeting on Friday, I believe it was, and there had been discussion at the table that at that point that the section from Lansdowne to Armstrong was complete, but we'll be waiting for Armstrong at that point to bring us from the end of the rail trail into town, because there was a gap in there. But on the way home, I noticed there was no gap. So did the rail trail crews that did the construction, the Splatcheen Development Corporation, did they smooth that in for us?
Yes. Yeah.
Because it looked pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I did
And-
walk it, and it's like I say, they have bollards to go in and a little bit of touch-up stuff and the
Mhm.
fencing, but yeah,
It's definitely usable.
yes,
And there's signage to go yet as well.
that is correct. Yes.
Just one question on the cure in place lining. I know we did some budget juggling and changed some things around. What percentage approximately are we scheduled to do this year of what's required?
We're doing this year we're just over 800 meters. And I don't have the overall percentage of what that is, but our plan is to do 1,000 meters per year. We did have an issue in securing the 150 mil liner material. So we omitted those from this year's project, and we'll defer that until next year's.
Thank you. Councilor Feller.
Sorry, can I ask one more question? I don't remember us having a boil water advisory before for just a section of town. And I'm wondering what would have caused that in just one section? I know how you fixed it, and I know what the reason was, but what would have caused it? And is there something we can do to prevent that from happening again, or is it just a one-off?
We don't have boil water notices often. The last one we did have was back in 2018, and actually in that same neighborhood. So the cause of it was just we have a spigot that has outdoor exposure that we sample from, and that's what that source of contamination was, and we're not exactly sure what that was that caused it, but it was a small amount. The levels were slightly elevated, but it was enough to go to a precautionary notice until we could determine the cause and location and get those guidelines back. So we've changed our sampling location and protocol, and that should clear up that anomaly.
So do you think it was the spigot as opposed to the actual water?
Yeah, it was a
Oh.
source spigot. Yes, correct.
And just confirming, like, so that happening again since 2018, we've changed our protocols a little bit, and I don't know the methodology for collecting water sampling for testing, but are we able to sanitize what we're sampling from prior to collecting the sample, that we can, like, if it's a different spigot that we're sampling from, can we sanitize that spigot before we're actually drawing the collection? Or, but there's some procedure in place now so that that would eliminate that from potentially happening again.
Yeah, through
Okay.
your worship, that is correct. Yeah, we do have our protocols in place for sanitization and our methodology for pulling samples. This one does have environmental exposure, so we've worked on reducing that environmental exposure to a more contained environment. So it doesn't provide those levels of results and that risk.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing nothing further, thank you very much, Mr. Ackerman. And now moving along to the presentation of reports, corporate services. Do you want me just to navigate this from here, or is it something you need to do, Philippa? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As you are all aware, our Chief Financial Officer tendered their resignation. And so currently we are without. We have attracted a new financial officer with the start date at the beginning of October. And that leaves us without a Chief Financial Officer for the month of September. This is one of those officer positions, such as the corporate officer, that is mandatory, and it is one of those must-haves under the community charter. So the city is needing an acting chief financial officer just to make sure things run smoothly and ensure that all of our deadlines are met. Luckily, September is not a super heavy month. There's just a few things. Never thought I would be writing a report like this. So, recommendations. Let's just cut right to the chase. That Janine Felker be removed as Chief Financial Officer, and that Philippa Harding be appointed as Acting Chief Financial Officer for the City of Armstrong. That's the first one. And the second motion would be that Janine Felker be removed as authorized signatory for the City of Armstrong. Notice I did not give myself that power. I thought I might be pushing it a little bit. So we have two resolutions there.
Thank you very much. So resolution number 1, can I have a mover, Councillor Wayner, seconder, Councillor Valstar? Is there any question at all regarding this? No, seems really straightforward. So I will call the question. All those in favor? And this will pass unanimously. And for number 2, that Janine Felker be removed as our signing authority. Can I have a mover, Councillor Todd, seconder, Councillor Drapla? Thank you. Was there any question there? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that will pass unanimously. Now, at this time, we'll have a brief interruption, and I'll call upon Mr. Smith to swear in Philippa as our Chief Financial Officer.
You want me to read it? Or do you want me to?
You need to read it.
I thought so. Okay. My oath of office. I, Philippa Harding, do solemnly affirm that I will truly, faithfully, and impartially, to the best of my knowledge, skills, and ability, execute the office of Acting Chief Financial Officer to which I have been appointed for the City of Armstrong. I have not received and will not receive any payment or reward, or any promise of payment or reward, for the exercise of any partiality or other improper execution of my office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Warren.
All right, and you're not going far because I'm seeing now at 6.2, think that's where we're, the joint meeting actions policy, correct?
Yes. This one, as you know, we did our bylaw for your council code of conduct. And that laid out for basically behavior amongst yourselves. It does nothing for behavior with any community groups or societies, or how you can maintain control and protect your staff in any meetings with outside organizations or outside people attending. So this would go from commissions to joint councils to society meetings, any of those. So we wanted to bring something forward that would be very simple, very easy to execute if things get heated in one of those meetings, which, as we all know, they do. So this policy is just directly to ensure that you are able and have a way to ensure that you can quickly stand up and make a point if someone is crossing those behavior boundaries, behaving inappropriately. So the procedure is really quite simple. You just need to interrupt the meeting, stand up. The chair has to, you say point of order, the chair will acknowledge you. You can interrupt anyone speaking with that. And if it is appropriate, you can ask that person you have a problem with to repeat what they just said, or if it doesn't seem fitting, you can explain your reason for the point of order, why you called it. I'm uncomfortable, this is unacceptable, this, whatever it may be. And you can request that it stop, that the behavior improve. We can sit down and carry on with the meeting. If you find that it is still not helping, it has not been effective, that is basically when you stand up and say, unfortunately, due to this continued behavior, I'm going to have to leave. You note the time, because at that point, usually, especially with the smaller meetings, if one or two of you would leave, then the meeting's over. There's no more quorum. So it's just a very simple, direct, boom, 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 easy to remember little format to help yourselves and help staff in any way when it's needed.
All right, can I have a recommendation that the policy 200-43 joint meeting action be approved? Do we have a mover? Councillor Weiner, seconder, Councillor Ballstar, and discussion, please. Councillor Weiner.
Yeah, thank you for this. It's comprehensive and it's easy steps to follow, and a lot of it makes sense, but sometimes in the moment you just need something to ground yourself to, and I think something like this would certainly help with that. Maybe my question is at the meetings there are the members of that meeting, and if staff are present in any type of role, is there a mechanism for them, or are they completely reliant on council? They're completely reliant on the members of the meeting. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
I just offer the opportunity, Councillor Drapley, you sent me some really good information, and I think we should review that moving forward, but did you want to make any comment at this point in time?
I think for now, this is a great start, and I think moving forward, it would be nice to have some type of policy for the city staff in particular about vexatious, I guess, complaints or requests, or in a way to kind of adjudicate those and handle them as a city, so that it just empowers staff from being able, if they're getting to a point where they feel like the questions or communication coming in towards them is inappropriate or vexatious, that that there's a process that can be followed, because we're still responsible for we're not trying to avoid resident complaints or anything like that, right? But at a certain point, communication can just become overwhelming, where it takes over someone's job, right? And all the other stuff that they have to do. And so there has to be some type of mechanism in there. So I think a policy to define what that looks like, where it goes, who's the second set of eyes on that before it's determined like that, just a policy for staff in that capacity. But I think I like this for kind of actions for elected officials within meetings.
And I'll just ask Mr. Smith to briefly make a comment on this regarding council's position and WorkSafe BC, because there is some gray areas amongst there, and will this, in your opinion, keep us covered or well positioned?
I would say that we should probably have some further conversations with WorkSafe BC in regarding the protection of staff as well as council. There are requirements that we need to ensure that we are covering in regards to confidentiality, specifically if there is ever a WorkSafe BC case opened. That there are strict guidelines and regulations in place by WorkSafe BC to protect the individual or individuals that may have filed a complaint. So there are some further steps that would be required by the city and that to take to ensure that we are following those guidelines or those recommendations from WorkSafe BC.
Any further questions? I think this is a great start and something we can build off, or a platform we can build off. And having stated that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And this will be carried unanimously. Thank you. Bylaws, the next one, 7.1. Oh, Councillor Belster.
Before we go, get to that, we skipped past the building permit monthly report on 5.1. Right at the very bottom.
My apologies. Would you like to present?
Thank you, Your Worship. There wasn't anything really noteworthy in the building permit report, but if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, I believe they mentioned to me that there was nothing to talk about, so we kind of left it at that, but I apologize for not hitting on that as we went forward. So under 7.1 bylaws, the permissive tax exemption, we have given it first, second, and third reading. So tonight we'll be looking to pass the bylaw that 2025-2028 permissive tax exemption bylaw 1929-2024 be adopted. To have somebody make that motion. Councillor Drapla, seconder. Councillor Wayner, thank you. Was there any further question on this? If not, I will call the question. All those in favor? And this will be carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for that. Under new business, 8.1, we have to have a motion to hold a council meeting off-site. And so under that aspect, September 5th, 2024 at 5 p.m., a special council meeting will be held outside the Armstrong City Hall at the Township of Spalmsheen Council Chambers located at 4144 Spalmsheen Way, Spalmsheen, BC. For legal purposes, this needs to be a motion passed by council. Do I have a mover? Councillor Valstar, seconded by Councillor Drapla. Was there any questions? Merely a formality. All those in favor? And this is carried unanimously. And at this time, we will be moving into an in-camera or closed session. For the reasons that council moving up in camera pursuant to the community charter, section 90-1A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. Also subsection F, law enforcement, if the council considers the disclosure could reasonably expect to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement or enactment. Subsection G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. Subsection I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Subsection K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of the municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. And pursuant to the community charter's section 92 subsection D, a matter that is under another enactment is such that the public must be excluded from this meeting. Having stated that, I have a motion to move in camera. Moved by Councillor Weiner, seconded by Councillor Drapula. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And now a motion for adjournment, please. Councillor Todd, second Councillor Valstar. All those in favor? And that too will be carried. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. We appreciate it. We've never had such a large audience.